Our talk, the almost but not yet, learning to live missionally in the training years. My name is Clara Formby.
And I'm Megan Ward.
And we are some third-year family medicine residents who will be talking about just kind of some of our things that we've learned over the past few years about how to learn how to live missionally in the training years. So the goals of our talk, like I said, we're going to share our stories of kind of our training course of, where all we've been. We'll also take some time to share some of the lessons we've learned along the way of how to live missionally. And then at the end, we'll have some practical next steps for you. So first up, my name is Clara. I am from the great state of South Carolina. I went to a really small school for undergrad called Erskine College in Due West, South Carolina. And then my medical school, I went to the Medical College of Georgia. And then I'm currently a PGY3, so third-year family medicine resident at Cahaba Family Medicine Urban Track. So that is in Birmingham, Alabama. And just a little bit about me. I chose medicine through missions is the way that I found it. I had some good friends who were doing family medicine residency at the time in Memphis, Tennessee. And I wanted to do missions long term, but didn't really know how to do that. And I was good at math and science. And when the three of those go together, people tell you, hey, you should be a doctor. And so I went and shadowed them in Memphis and absolutely fell in love with the mission and vision of what they did. And so a lot of that had to do with the greater CCHF network too, with some CCHF clinics that I was at. And so, the rest is history.
And I am Megan. I am from Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth area. Stayed in Texas for undergrad at a small liberal arts school north of Dallas. Actually not in Austin, but it's called Austin College. And went to medical school in Austin at the University of Texas Dell Medical School. And I'm currently also a third year at Cahaba Family Medicine with Clara in the urban track, which has been a great time. Why medicine? I didn't grow up knowing exactly what I wanted to do or that I wanted to be a doctor, but in college knew I wanted to help people and also enjoyed science and had mentors that were like, well, like go where your passions and talents align and kind of strive toward that. And I thought I wanted to do chemistry like professor, and then I realized that I wanted to spend more time with people instead of in the lab, and wanted to kind of be able to like tangibly have conversations with people and physically help them. And so the Lord made a way for me to be able to do medicine, which I'm grateful for, and feel like I am able to help people that way. In terms of like family medicine, I actually thought I was going to do peds, and at a CCHF conference, I guess 4 years ago, my third year of medical school, just felt a calling from the Lord, and he changed my heart to family medicine. And there was a speaker here who talked about there not being any like God-forsaken places, but only church-forsaken places, and that we needed to go to those places. And I was really encouraged by a lot of the people here, and so that's why I kind of ended up in family medicine, just to be able to tend to the needs in front of me in whatever community I ended up in. So yeah. So we are going to kind of start with some common misunderstandings about living missionally. This first one, I'll start living missionally once I'm done with medical school, PA school, nursing school, once I'm done with college, once I'm done with residency, just once I get over this next hurdle. It'll always, be this kind of thing in the future that you can't quite grasp, but that you have to have everything tidied up to do, or that you have to meet certain check marks. And so we're going to talk about how that is not true and how it's really great to incorporate that as you go and be able to just come alongside others doing the same thing. Another misconception that we want to kind of dive into is that we, when you kind of move to a place or kind of get plugged in to a place that you've heard good things about or good things about the people, you think that you'll instantly have great community and great relationships and fruit and bring people to the Lord every day. And we know that life is not like that, and that it takes work and intentionality, and it requires time. And that is like anything. And so I think being patient in that and what the Lord is doing has been something we have learned. And another misconception that we want to talk about is that we often kind of look at others and want to be just like them. And we have this desire to do what they're doing and go to the hardest, darkest places, the least reached places. And while there is goodness in that for sure, and the Lord does call certain people to that, it is not the only way. And you don't have to have a prescriptive way of doing things or check certain boxes to be able to glorify the Lord in whatever or wherever you're doing those hard things. And so we wanted to kind of provide some freedom in that. The Lord gives us that freedom and space to obey his calling in our lives as individuals, but also as a body. And so that can look different for lots of different people. And so just remembering that you have some flexibility based on the talents and the gifts that the Lord has given you.
So this is just kind of an outline of what we want to talk about today. And so just kind of 6 points of ways to live missionally while in training. And so we'll be talking about the importance of the local body, importance of accountability, importance of mentorship, of vision trips, of proximity, and then lastly, of a living sacrifice. And so first up, we just want to talk about the importance of the local body. So there are so many different kinds of churches today. We are plagued with options in America. And especially if you are from the Southeast or the South in general, like Megan and I, you probably have 4 different churches on the same street corner. And so there are lots of choices, but kind of no matter what choice you choose, it's important to be involved in the local body of believers. And so just kind of wanted to point out some different ways of doing church. So church isn't always about the building or the denomination. So many of us are a part of what we call a house church. And so those are like smaller groups of people meeting together in each other's homes in the same community. And that can look like a lot of different things too, even within this concept of house church. And so that's something that that I would definitely encourage you to look out for if that's in your area as an option. There's also big churches, small churches, church plants, denominations, and there's 1,000 different ones of those. But no matter where you find yourself all along that spectrum, it's biblical and it's just completely imperative for you to be a part of the local body of believers. Because if you're not plugged in, then you're not going to be encouraged to continue to strive to live missionally where you are. And you can't just say, oh, well, I can't go to church because I have classes on Sundays, or I have to study on Sundays, or blah, 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 blah. Make time for it. You have to make time for it. And so just real quick, Megan and I will give 2 examples. I had in residency for the past 2.5, almost 3 years, have been a part of a house church in Birmingham. And I have found that incredibly helpful and encouraging for the way that I one day plan to live overseas. Because the idea behind house church is you live and work and are in church together with the same community. And so when you're overseas on a team, that's often kind of the way things look. And so it can be challenging, but also incredibly growing and fruitful. And so for me, that's what I found to be super helpful for me in residency, to continue to remind myself to be on mission and to be learning these lessons that I will be able to use overseas one day.
Yeah, and I, like Clara, was a part of the house church initially in Birmingham, and we had kind of two separate bodies under kind of the same leadership at that time, and we hadn't done it before and really enjoyed trying it out and love the community. It is really nice to have just like sweet intimacy with fellow believers on a weekly basis. We had come from a big church in Texas and went to that, and then just through kind of prayer and a lot of it had to do with like my husband going to seminary and needing to kind of be an internship at a more kind of structured, established church. We transitioned out of house church like halfway through residency and are now at a like mid-sized church, I suppose, but in Birmingham, kind of like 5-10 minutes from where we live. And that's been great too, kind of getting plugged into a slightly different community, but still people on fire for the Lord.
Yeah. So neither way is wrong, but just making sure that you're plugged in.
So another piece of living missionally that we wanted to talk about was the importance of accountability. And so we have some verses here that are helpful to kind of just frame the importance of this. And I'm sure y'all are all really familiar with this, but Proverbs, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Having people in your life to point you back to Christ is so important, especially in difficult years of training when you're tired and grumpy and hangry and exhausted and just don't have a lot of emotional bandwidth at times. Having people to sharpen you, to point you back to Christ is, you just can't even comprehend how important it is. Also, James 5:20, whoever turns a sinner from the error of their way will save them from death and cover a multitude of sins. Just thinking about, hey, like we're all broken and we're all sinners and that's still happening, and confessing that to fellow believers and repenting and turning back to the Lord is so important, because without that we can find ourselves really far from the Lord, and in a dry season that can be really dangerous because Satan can kind of easily kind of subtly work his way into your life in a way that is tricky and can really have a huge detrimental impact on your faith and on kind of what the Lord has called you to. And so having people to co-labor with you is really important. And with that, that's a hard thing to kind of talk about and think about, but there's always encouragement in it, right? Like, because they're doing it because they love you, because they want to bring you closer to God and acknowledge that, hey, like, what are you not believing about God right now that I can help you and support you in? And even though you're not experiencing it right now, pull you back to truth. And another verse that is helpful is, just thinking about Ephesians and building each other up. But only such as is good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. So, yeah, words can really impact other people, and knowing that encouraging them in faith and in truth with the words of Jesus can be so life-giving, even just if it's a small encouragement or specific prayer time and meeting with a group. I think I would really encourage y'all to do that if you're not already doing it. It doesn't have to necessarily be with a specific church body. It can be with fellow believers. Clara and I are actually in the same one, even though we are in different technical church bodies right now, and that's been really great to have a rhythm of meeting together, of checking in, of praying for each other. And do it now. Don't wait, because it's only gonna be helpful for your walk.
Yeah. And as far as what Megan was talking about, we are in a small group together, but that doesn't necessarily mean we get a chance to meet every week, because life is hard. But even just, having those people in your life that you can text and be like, hey, I am really struggling with X, Y, and Z, and I need you to hold me accountable this week. And that is crucial to making your mission, your ministry fruitful. So yeah.
Yeah, and following up on those things too. Just trying to like have someone else hold you accountable, but also you being like, oh yeah, you mentioned this 2 weeks ago. Like, how's that going? And checking back in.
Yeah, it takes a lot of intentionality. Also, another thing to be intentional about too is finding a mentor. So find someone who you want to look like one day. That doesn't mean you have to look exactly like them. That doesn't mean that your story is the same as theirs. But it is a very biblical concept to have a mentor, like the concept of discipling. And so Paul discipled Timothy and Titus and so many others. And so that was incredibly important for the continuation of the gospel, and just, to be able to learn from what Paul had already known or been through, to learn by his example. And then also just the way that Naomi also helped guide Ruth. She was a mentor for her throughout her life. And then one of the greatest examples of mentorship in the Bible is the way that Elijah trained up Elisha, the prophet, in the Old Testament. And so we just strongly encourage you to seek out a mentor. And so kind of just for me personally, I feel like there are mentors that have kind of come and go in my life. So like I can think of specific mentors I had in college who were really important for me in my college years versus mentors I had in medical school who were incredibly important to keep my mission and vision, to uphold the vision during those years, and then also now during residency. But I also have kind of like a handful, really one couple in particular, who have been mentors my whole life, and just so incredibly thankful for them that through every season they have been someone to like I can go to for advice on what's going on. And thankfully they are, he's a physician and they are overseas now. And so they know what it's like. They know what residency's like. They know all the ups and downs of it. And so they've been incredibly helpful and supportive. And then also someone to just remind me, like, residency and training doesn't last forever. Like there is an end to it. There's an end in sight. And yeah, so I'll probably talk about them kind of for several of these examples because they've just been so helpful for me. But I just can't say like enough how important it is to seek out mentorship, because it's not always going to come easily. Sometimes you have to seek it out, but it's definitely worth it.
And I think to build off Clara's point of it's not going to be given to you, I think a lot of y'all are considering, medicine as a future career, whether that's in, being a physician, being a nurse, being a PA, being a social worker, whatever it may be. And it is different than a kind of workspace advisor or like supervisor. There is that nuance of not only someone who has been through what you're going through and has gone, has done things ahead of you and knows what it's like and knows that experience, but someone who also has wrestled with the obstacles of what that looks like to be obedient to the Lord in those times, and how that relationship is also a dynamic one in these certain seasons. And so I think having someone to almost, even you could kind of say shepherd you in a way, and lead you in the path that God has provided for you is really helpful, because it not only helps you kind of do the work that the Lord has called you to, but also kind of draw near to him and be an example and a redeeming influence to others. And so you're gonna, at least in this training season that most of y'all are in, I would assume, you will spend a lot of time with your coworkers and your co-residents and your your classmates. Students. Yeah, classmates. There we go. Co-students. Gosh. And it's really important to have mentorship in that, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people, and you want to have that pouring into, and it's worth it, and it will help frame and give you a good perspective on going forward.
Yeah. And being a mentor yourself, because there's always going to be someone ahead of you and there's always going to be someone behind you, and so remembering to be that mentor to someone else who's in a season maybe that you've walked through already. So you can be both a mentor and a mentee.
The next piece we'll talk about is the importance of vision trips. We think this is really integral to being obedient to the Lord. I know most of y'all are very familiar with Matthew 28, but we're going to read it because it's just that good. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, even unto the end of the age. Amen. So with that, we want y'all to kind of jump in, get your feet wet, see where and how the Lord is calling you to obey that command. There are many, many different ways to serve. It can look different depending on your experiences and what the Lord has called you to, but you can help send fellow churchgoers, body of believers, friends, and help mobilize them to parts of the world that they feel called and feel led to share the gospel, whether that is domestically or internationally. You can be the person going, and Clara is a great example of that, of just having a really good sense of the Lord calling her to share the gospel in unreached places, which is so inspiring. Or you can be a supporter. And this is so integral. I think a lot of people think, oh gosh, I'm just going to send money, or I'm just going to pray and put a reminder on my phone. That is so important. I mean, prayer is the foundation of all of this. And so knowing that there is so much space for you to be a part of the Great Commission and be able to support this both across the world and also in your own space, in your own communities, in your own home, in your own workplace, that you can share Jesus' light with everybody and be able to kind of take the plunge into kind of going to other places.
Yeah. So you, as far as these vision trips go, you may have an opportunity to be a sender for a trip, to be a goer, to be a supporter. And so just every season of life is different. Just encourage you, asking the Lord, well, what is next for me? Am I a sender? Am I a goer? Am I a supporter? And where are you calling me to go? So for me, I've been able to go to the Horn of Africa, and then North Africa last year, and then we'll have a chance to go to Europe actually just in a couple weeks in March to work with refugees. So definitely each trip is valuable, and these vision trips also, it's not just for you to see what it's like to be overseas. It's also hugely important for the people that you're going to visit, because you can be an encouragement to them. And then also, learning from each other. So maybe you didn't get the chance to go somewhere this year, but your friend did. And so asking about those trips and learning from each other about where they've been is incredibly important, and sharing those connections too. So
yeah, I got to go, we get to do a mission trip every year, which is a huge blessing. My first year was the height of COVID, so I actually got to go on a trip to a rural part of Alabama, which was really eye-opening and humbling, and the Lord really showed me, that just even in kind of our own backyards, even just a few hours away, there's still lots of opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And then this past year, I got to go to Jordan and see the amazing work that the Lord is doing through missionaries there. And it was just a really sweet time where the Lord just showed me the faithful obedience of the people there. Even if they don't see people coming to Christ every day, or to the Lord, that they just every day wake up and are humbling themselves before God and just committing to what He's called them to. So that was really great.
Yeah. And so our next point, kind of as we're coming closer to the end here, is the importance of proximity. So just wanted to read this quote from Brian Stevenson, who is a lawyer, an activist for people who have been wrongly accused on death row. And he says, "We cannot create justice without getting close to places where injustices prevail. We have to get proximate." And so what we mean by proximity is getting your hands dirty. Like going to the hard places if that's what the Lord's calling you to. But it can look different too. So proximity can mean moving to a rural place and being proximate to people who have suffered from health disparities or injustices in a rural setting. And that's a big part of the Southeast U.S. But also in an urban setting. And so being proximate to those who are hurting in the urban setting. Megan and I both live in a poorer neighborhood in Birmingham, and it's been incredibly important to be proximate to the people here, because that's the first step of understanding and seeing what those injustices are before being able to do anything about it. And that's a huge way, just being proximate to the pain throughout your training years keeps you reminded of what your goals are and what your heart is behind why you're studying the Krebs cycle, or why you're studying anatomy or biochemistry. It's when you're living proximate to the pain, you're reminded that this is why I'm waking up every morning to study. This is why I'm taking these tests, and it's for the sake of the kingdom, and it's for these people that I'm living around. And so that can be suburban or overseas as well. And then also just the idea of long-term versus short-term. It doesn't mean that you have to up and move to the ghetto of whatever city you're in right now and live there for the rest of your life, because it's not easy living proximate to pain. It is painful. And so just also want it to feel like you have the liberty of long-term or short-term. So if it's staying a month or staying a summer or whatever, but just trying to do your best to be proximate to the hurt.
Yeah, it is an invaluable experience, regardless of, I think, how you feel about it. It's so eye-opening, so humbling, and thinking about Jeremiah, just seeking the welfare of where you've been placed, and pray for them on their behalf, because in their welfare you will find yours. And just building relationships and knowing that the Lord can teach you so much. While there's just a spectrum of so much you can learn and do for the Lord, but even if He just opens your eyes to the hurt that is in the world, and that He breaks your heart for what breaks His, is just it's been a really humbling experience to come from a pretty comfortable living through college and med school, and then being intentional in our community in West End. It's not pretty. It's it's difficult, and we see the hurt around us, and we can really be just grow a lot in that. So would encourage it for sure. The last thing we're going to talk about is importance of a living sacrifice. Thinking of Romans 12:1, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. So what a great verse. It is a lot to take in, can seem overwhelming, but it's actually easier than you think, because you just being who the Lord has called you to love and serve Him first, and love neighbors as yourself, and just count others more significant, can go so far in your actions, in your words, in that one patient interaction, in that one conversation, for the sake of His kingdom. So don't discount that, and just try to serve Him in all that you do, and bring Him glory in every step of your day.
And just one quick example for that, just in my second year of medical school, one of my classmates asked one day in class, like, why do you work so hard? Why do you, like, if it's not for the approval of your parents or the approval of someone? And so I was able to explain to him, like, I'm working hard, like, for Jesus because he loves me, not for him to love me. And so I got a chance to, like, share the gospel a little bit. And then the very next day, he took his own life. And so you just never know what those conversations, like how the Lord is using you, whether it's a patient encounter or an interaction with your classmate or a neighbor or whoever. The Lord can move in mighty ways, and we can trust that he is good when we choose to live our lives as a living sacrifice.
So yeah, what next? This is not an expansive list, but just a few places and conferences that we think you can continue to rub shoulders with people who are like-minded, love the Lord, and are hoping to expand his kingdom here on earth, whether that's in training or after that, as we continue to be professionals in this in this world.
Yep. And then just want to leave you with this parting quote from Jim Elliot. Wherever you are, be all there. So not just physically, not just, emotionally, but just like the season of life, whatever season of life you're in right now, wherever you find yourself, be all there. Thanks, and we wish you the best.